Well, actually, Ellen and I were at a retreat just a week or so ago at Canuga with a whole bunch of ministers and people. Had a wonderful time, and I asked a question, and Ellen knew the answer. And I don't know how many of you all, some of you know me from way, way back, but you may not know the answer to this question because I probably wasn't doing it at the time. But the question I'm going to ask is, what are we going to do right now? If you know me, what are we going to do right now? We're going to pray. How are we going to pray? What are we going to do? I have to go over I could go to there's my lovely wife, Nancy, back there. Nancy would know the answer to this question, but Ellen knows the answer. So you can be the star of the class. Ah. So how about that? Are you all up for that? And I'll be the timekeeper here. And then after 5 minutes, we'll begin. But that way we just sort of, we'll connect with one another. And it's sort of consistent with the things we were talking about today, don't you think? So I will see you in 5 minutes. Well, and so out of the silence, we begin the best of beginnings. And so it is. Amen. See, I guess to wave at those people, I have to wave there, right? Is that it? There, okay. Oh, well, it's good to see all of you here, and thank you very much for coming to be part of this experience. We call the title of this "Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay," and that's certainly true. We all have bills to pay. There is that aspect of life that is so concrete, but we want to be able to live our lives and have it flow out of the silence. And so that's part of the reason we begin with silence, is so that our experience will flow out of that. And that's why if I did a job interview or I had a meeting with Ellen while we were down at Unity of Fort Myers, we would always begin with silence. If I had a job interview with someone, they were interviewing for a job when I was at Unity Village, we'd begin with silence, which probably doesn't ordinarily happen when you come for a job interview. But, if you're coming to Unity Village, things are going to be a little bit different. Well, I've got some great questions for you. They're rhetorical. You don't have to answer them now, but it's a framework for us, and I think it creates some of that inner conflict that we were talking about a little bit this morning. Here's a series of questions. Here's the first one. If God is our source, why are there people who live in poverty? And this number may have changed, but I was familiar with this number from years ago. Why do 17 million people die of malnutrition related complications every single year? If God's our source, why is that happening? Another question. Is it a sin to be poor, as espoused by Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, in one of his books? How would that statement feel to someone who considered himself or herself poor? It is stated that the law of love is such that we can have whatever we want. Is that true? That we can have whatever we want? And it is stated that this is from Eric Butterworth, probably one of our best thinkers in the Unity movement, incredible minister and writer. He said, any person who is experiencing lack in some way is in some way living in opposition to the flow. Is that really true? What about a child in Afghanistan? Are they living in opposition to the flow? I guess one of the things that pops up for me when I read that one is I would say somebody is living in opposition to the flow. Somebody is. True? So, here's another question. Unity one of the few religions on the face of the earth that actually has a body of teachings about prosperity. We're going to alter that a little bit later before we're done, but we're one of the few that has a body of teachings about it. And yet, we struggle. Individuals struggle. My guess is some of you in this room, you're struggling with prosperity. Unity churches can be struggling with prosperity. World headquarters, we have two dimensions there. One's Unity School, the other is Unity Worldwide, and they can struggle with prosperity. How is that possible when we actually have a body of teachings about that subject? How can that be? And then here's one for everyone. And if you got paper and pencil, take a shot at it. If you don't, see what you can do in your mind. What's your definition of prosperity? Probably, unless you've had to do it in a class or something, you probably have never done that. But what would be your definition of prosperity? And quite frankly, your definition is the most important one. You know why? Of course, you're living out of it. There, you may not have written it down, prosperity is da-da-da-da, but you have right now, as do I, certain attitudes, beliefs, ideas about it. And we are living out of it right now. Would you like to know what Charles Fillmore's definition of prosperity is? Of course you would, right? With the mass people, you can't see everything but their eyes, you know. Here's Charles's definition. I'm going to read this to you, and I'll read it a couple times to help you out. But I want you to take note of certain, like, key words that sort of pop up for you, okay? So I'll read it a number of times. Prosperity is not in the possession of things, but in the recognition of supply and in the knowledge of free and open access to an inexhaustible storehouse of all that is good and desirable. That's his, definition of prosperity. Want me to read it again? Okay? You can take note of just jot, you probably want to be thinking in terms of maybe like 3 words that just jump out at you. Prosperity is not in the possession of things, but in the recognition of supply and in the knowledge of free and open access to an inexhaustible storehouse of all that is good and desirable. So, what jumps out at you? What words? Maybe I could capture some of these here. Excuse. Whoa, that's a big one. Yes. Supply. You know, that word, as you will see, wow, is going to be really key for us. Recognition, yeah. Recognition of the supply. Yes. Say again? Free. Okay. Yeah, free. Yes. Okay, let me just not. Of course, for many people, that's what it is. Yes. Inexhaustible, yeah. Good. And already there? Yeah. So let me write down good here. Let me just define that as it's present. Yes. Storehouse. Yeah. Inexhaustible. Okay, that's enough for now. We're going to get every single word he said. We're going to get of and the. And there are some, I'll tell you what words popped out for me. Excuse me. Recognition. It's like something's here, but you got to be able to recognize it. It's like we talked about this Sunday morning. You know, the kingdom is here. Got to be able to recognize it. How does that happen? The other word was supply. As you will see, that becomes very key for us in just a little bit. And I like knowledge also. Knowledge of free and open access to an inexhaustible. That was another word that came up for me. Because a lot of times for us as human beings, supply, and we have different ideas about it. We'll talk about it in just a second. But it's like it is exhausted. Or if I'm giving, for instance, we literally believe, humanity does, that if you give, you create lack in your life. That's what all the appearances declare. You know, I have it, I don't have it. Believe me, that appearance, it impacts and influences people's lives. It truly does. Okay, here's, I post some on Facebook. Here is my latest post about prosperity. So this is something that I'm trying to live out of. About prosperity. It's not a lake from which you drink. It is a river that flows through you. That's one of the things that's sort of moving within me. So, we all agree God's the source, right? And there's poverty. So, what's the problem? We need to get at that before we're done today. The nature of the source, it is present, is it not? It's accessible at all times to everyone. I would say that's a characteristic of a divine source for us. It is inexhaustible, therefore never depleted, and no need to hoard it. And you can see where this begins to butt in to some of the things that we do as human beings because we want to hoard stuff. True? Here's what I think. I don't think the issue is with source. I think we are confused about supply. I think that's the problem for human beings. We don't know what supply is. For us, supply is what the world values. And here's some examples. Money, right? Stock, currency, coin, Bitcoin, and land. We think these things are supply, and we are in grave error. But that's what we believe, and I think it's at the root of our problem. It is written in the scripture. This is Luke 12th chapter, verse 32, if you're interested in this. And it says, it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. It did not say it's the Father's good pleasure to give you your rent or some money or land or get you a job. It didn't say any of that. It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And a bunch of us here, how many of you were here this morning? A bunch of you. We spend a lot of time talking about the kingdom. And it'll come up here. And that's what's being offered to us, the kingdom. And either we don't know what it is, or we don't know how to recognize it and receive it. That's where some of our problems lie. So let's take a look at characteristics of two different kinds of supplies. Will this go up here? Oops. I think I'm going to have to do this. Here's the first one. Can earthly supply be hoarded? Okay. It can be hoarded. Can you run out? Yeah. Can be depleted. Um, can there be a situation where you have lots of what people consider to be supply, earthly supply, and it's completely worthless? There are such times. It can be completely worthless. And I'll give you an example of that in a little bit. So it can be worthless. I have a feeling it's dependent on certain things. It's dependent on maybe, for some people, the stock market, the value of the stocks, maybe price of oil in the past has had an influence. How about education or job? And your competence on the job. All things that seem to have an effect on this, do they not? Let's see what else I got here. Depleted, worthless. It's dependent on earthly conditions. That's where, these come in, price of oil or stock or different inflation, all those kinds of things. So it's not available at all times. Whoops. And to everyone. Isn't that true? Isn't that true of earthly supply? Well, why in the world would we want to put our eggs in that basket? Who would do that? Well, maybe we don't have anything better. Maybe we can't recognize another kind of supply. Possible. So let's just take a look here at divine supply. Can you hoard it? No, I don't think you can. I don't think, and I think Jesus talked about it, and we see it in the Hebrews wandering in the wilderness. It's put this way. It's daily bread. The sufficiency is for the day, for the moment. So, can't be hoarded. Can it be depleted? Not depleted. Does it lose its value? And just how valuable is it? So it doesn't lose value. What else? What else we got here? Does it depend upon your education? Look at those people in the Bible. There's some books. Catherine Ponder called some of the characters in the Bible millionaires. And they had, how much education they have? None. But they may have known something. I don't know, So it doesn't depend upon, there's no dependence on earthly conditions. So they just say on the earthly. See what else I got here about it. It is where you are. This one's key. It's not affected by hard times. Not affected by hard times. And sometimes we make excuses around that. Can you accumulate it? Looks like it's a ball game going on, I think. Okay. So, question of there you go. So, here we have these two kinds of supply. Which one appeals to you? Duh. Now, academically sitting in a class, it's obviously it's the divine supply. Who in the world would place their dependency upon an earthly supply that has all of these dynamics when you've got a divine supply that has that kind of dynamic? But as we were talking about, the real issue is supply. And the whole idea is we have to be able to recognize it. There's a story of Eddie Rickenbacker. You know, he was a World War I ace. And during World War II, he was on a mission. And a big aircraft, he wasn't, flying fighters anymore. They ran out of gas. They had to ditch at sea. And they were in a raft, and they were out there for quite a while. One man would actually drink seawater, and he would die. Eddie Rickenbacker had a funny hat. And he also carried a copy of the New Testament with him. And he read from Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus talked about, here they are, they're in dire straits. They had a bunch of oranges among them, and they had depleted them. And so he's reading from the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' teachings, and he's saying, take no thought for your life, what you'll eat or drink or wear. And he goes on to, but seek first the kingdom, and all things will be provided for you. So incredible, really. And it was, I know, I bet there were tears on that raft when he read that. He had on this funny hat. It wasn't long after that that a bird came and landed on Eddie's hat. He grabbed it. That bird sacrificed itself for those men, and they had something to eat. And then it wasn't long after that that a rain squall came overhead. And it rained, and they had water. And they were still out there for some time. But what if one of the men would have reached into his pocket and brought out and said, I got a couple $100 bills here, guys. Is that really going to help us here? Or somebody takes out probably wouldn't have been a German Kugelrand during World War II, I suppose. But if it had brought out some of one of these examples of earthly supply and put it there. Now, somebody could have said, I have a deed for some land. Land would have been real good for them, but not a deed for land. You know what I mean? So that's the situation where you can find yourself where those things that we consider to be so filled with worth and value that are absolutely worthless. They have no value for us whatsoever. And so we have to learn how to recognize the supply. Interestingly enough, the supply it's actually natural. So many things about the spiritual life and the way the universe is created, it's all natural. Give an example. I lived in Spokane, Washington, and I used to have a 3-mile loop that I would run. And as I ran, there was a pony that was in a fenced-in area, a paddock, and he was outside all the time. And in Spokane, the winters are brutal. I mean, just brutal. So I'm running around there, and it's spring. He looks like a regular old pony to me. But as we get into the fall, and I'm running, and all of a sudden, this pony's got himself a fur coat. And it is really thick. And one day, he knows what's coming, I suppose, or some part of him does. He's at the fence, so I walked over to him. I said, "Where'd you get the coat? You get it down at Dillard's? Did you get it at one of the Habitat for Humanity? Where'd you get the coat?" And the pony looked me in the eye and he said, "It came from within." Isn't that the way it is? It came from within. And for him, it didn't come with any effort. It was natural. And it was provided for him. So it must be that it's the same way for us. And that little pony whispered to me, he said, "You know, Jim, manifestation is none of your business." And the truth is, for most of us as human beings, we make manifestation, that paycheck and money and this and that and the other thing, we make it our business, do we not? And it's big business for us. And so later on here, and just I want to give you a choice. You have to make a determination how you're going to live your life. Is it going to be manifestation is my business, or manifestation is not my business? You have to make a choice. And I can say to you, one of those, as you go through the conflict that we were talking about this morning, one of those results in peace. And one of those results in anxiety and ongoing anxiety. So, what is the supply? And those of you that were here this morning, you can probably guess. You know what the supply is? It is a conscious awareness of the source, which is God. So that as we become aware of the Creator, that presence that dwells within us, that consciousness, as it is with all states of consciousness, will manifest itself. And it will manifest itself in the way in which it is needed. And if you are on a life raft out in the water, it will manifest as needed. Bird on your head or rain showers, whatever it is. That's the nature of it. Yes. Yes. Comment here. Yeah. Hold on one sec. We got to get a microphone for you. That'll help me.
Well, a little story, really, and it's brief. Living in Atlanta, my daughter and I was in between jobs, had eaten our last meal for that day. She had to go to school, and I didn't have any more money. And I said to her, "I don't know what we're going to eat for dinner." The night before, I had done some laundry and put it outside on these lines because I lived in a condo, and there was a 10-foot fence around the backyard, but it had this portable clothesline. So I walked out the back door to get the clothes, thinking to myself, what am I going to feed my child for dinner? I was thinking about her. As I'm pulling some clothes off the line, there is a crumbled up $10 bill on the ground. And I stood there and looked at it and teared up, and I thought, okay, there's a 10-foot fence around. The gate is locked from the inside, and the fence connects to the buildings. No one could have gotten in. So where did the crumbled up $10 bill come from? It was just enough to get something to eat. So my question to you is, where did that $10 come from?
I can tell you exactly where it came from.
Source, but how did it
Well, of course, yeah. But it came from your consciousness. There's no other way it could have gotten there. There has to be, we're about to see that in just a little bit with a little demonstration. There has to be an avenue. That's part of the challenge. The source is here. The supply is here. But there has to be an avenue through which it actually comes into our lives. So we're going to talk about that here in just a minute. Might as well go ahead and do it right now. I actually need, and is Gail here? Okay, you cannot come. I need 2 people to come forward. Yes, sir. Why don't you stand right here and kind of face in that direction? Let me give you that. And then who's the other person that's coming up? Come on up. Tell me your name for everybody.
Ken.
This is Ken, everybody. Hey. And why don't you come on over here? This is Sherry. Okay, of course. And Sherry, why don't you take those matches, and would you light that candle?
Oh, I get the hard part.
They're a little tricky, but you can get. There you go. And while you got that one going, I want you to light this one.
There's no wick.
Well, what? Is that a problem?
Yes, there's no avenue.
Wait a minute. You mean you're telling me there's hours of light and warmth in this candle?
And no wick.
And we can't get to it?
Correct.
Because it's got to have a wick. Wow. I'm flabbergasted. I'm flabbergasted. Let's give him a hand.
That's a good demonstration.
Let's talk about this for a moment. This is God's dilemma. Because it's all here. All the light, all the warmth, love, let us say, it's all here. But there has to be an avenue. Well, you picked up on that fast. You know, I've done this demonstration lots of times. So it really is a powerful. And most people, on your behalf, they will jab around in there and they'll try to get that thing going. To my delight, I might add. Well, most people, they do it to the degree where their fingers almost burn, and I have to say, you better burn that or blow that out. I had to do that with Gail, by the way, who was doing it. But that's the issue. God needs an avenue through which there can be an expression. And the avenue is a person, but a special person. Not any person more special than another, but the specialness of the person is that he or she is conscious of the presence of God. Whenever anyone awakens to the presence of God, an avenue is created. That's why we spent all the time we spent on it this morning. For Jesus, the most important thing was that we become aware of our oneness with God. That consciousness will manifest in varied ways, including a crumpled $10 bill on an enclosed fence. Or it could be an idea. Or it could be an opportunity. It could be any number of things, and we will be talking about those before we are done today. So you get the gist of this, and you begin to see this way of life and this kind of insight. It is one of responsibility. You have your responsibility to do what is yours to do to become awake. Once awake, all manner of things will flow forth from within you. Before we're done today, we'll talk about that manifestation, how it begins, what to look for in all those kinds of things. So let's talk a little bit about this, because there's a big focus that humans put on this. Needs. There is immense confusion about needs. I'll tell you what needs do. And when they do this, if you participate with it, the need is done. It has done all it can do for you. Needs, you might want to jot this down, turn us to God. That's what they do. Once that happens, once that turn takes place, the need has done all it can do. Humanity has the false belief that God fulfills needs. That is not true. If God fulfilled needs, if that's what God did, what God was about, as soon as a need cropped up in our life, it would be dealt with. Because, statement of Joel Goldsmith, what God can do, God is doing. So God's not slacking on the job. It's not slothful. It's not ignoring us. But we think we got to get God's attention because somehow this omniscient God does not know that we need money in order to have a meal for our kid. So we typically present the need to God with the idea that God will fulfill it. And I'm here to say to you, and humanity needs to get this, God does not fulfill needs. Now that is a shocking kind of a blow, a body blow to us. I know that because I've taken the body blow myself. Let me put it another way that'll make more sense and in context with the candle demonstration that we just saw. And it is this, that a need is not an avenue through which the source can flow. That's one way of saying it. You understand? We think the universe works in the way that God fulfills the need. Not true. A need is not an avenue through which it is fulfilled. However, it doesn't mean that needs can't be fulfilled. Obviously, they can be fulfilled. They are fulfilled. But it's important for us as human beings to know how the universe works. That's one of our problems. We don't know how it works. And there's got to be a wick in the candle. So you might want to, along with what we talked about this morning, I and the Father are one, as somewhere to put our focus for prayer and meditation. You might want to have something else to dwell on in your prayer and meditation. And it is this: I am a wick in God's candle. For you and for me to be a wick in God's candle. What you're looking for is, and it's odd, but you're looking for this. Let me write this down. This is what I call it. The no-need state. As long as you're asking, you're not in this state. Asking is part of it because you have to be open and receptive. But you're looking for a state of consciousness where there are no needs. Thomas Merton said, a rich man has no needs. Now, as he's talking about somebody that's loaded with money and they can buy whatever they want, a monk talking about that? I think not. He's talking about a state of consciousness where we're not in lack. And there is a psalm in the scripture that addresses this need. Anybody know what it is? 23rd Psalm. Exactly right. The Lord is my shepherd, what? I shall not want. Another way to say that would be, when I experience the presence of God as my source, I don't have any needs. So this is going to be one of the ways that you can determine that you're in that consciousness that is the wick, that it can be expressed. You understand what I mean? And so one of the signs will be that the asking ceases. There will be a sense of contentment, peace, gratitude. Does that mean there's something to be grateful about? Maybe, eventually. But in the beginning of this, when consciousness is dawning, nothing's happened out here. It's just here within you. But it says to you, something's happening. You understand? Now, we've talked about some pretty challenging things. I think it's time. How's our time going here? I know we're not going anywhere beyond 12:30, so not 12:30. We're in a timeless state. 2:30, no more than 2:30. Maybe before that, we'll see how we go. But let's just pause for a moment, and for our folks that are with us as well. How do you sit with the things I've been saying to you? Because we're talking about prosperity from a sort of a mystical standpoint. So, and what that really means is a God consciousness standpoint. So, are you having trouble with some of the things I'm saying? Is the conflict that I talked about this Sunday morning, is there some conflict going on inside? There's a part of you that says, that's not right. Anybody? You guys are, yes. Microphone coming.
From my human perspective, I have plenty. And from a spiritual perspective, source is endless. But like Clara was saying earlier, when she was with her daughter and had no money to feed her daughter, I think it can be really hard for people who are in lack of physical things to feel like they're in a no-need state.
That is absolutely true. Absolutely true. Yes. Talking about how difficult it is for people when they're either in the midst of lack and they don't know where the next meal's coming from or whatever, and how difficult it is to get into a no-need state. Absolutely. That's where, let me just say as a kind of an answer to that, that's where you need help. You need help on a physical level, and you need help on a spiritual level with someone to pray for you. Because, I mean, my goodness, if you're in a situation where your child is being rushed to the hospital, how effective are your prayers going to be then? You know, you need to get on the phone, call Silent Unity, and call the prayer ministry, call Ellen. You need some help. So by all means, reach out then. See, there was someone here? Yes. Another microphone? Come this way. There you go. Everybody can hear.
My name is Nancy, and I've been talking with you. I talked with your wife earlier. I'm working on the History for Unity.
Oh yeah, we'll be hooking up here later. Yeah.
I've had a difficult year and a half. I've had several surgeries, and I live by myself, and basically no solid income other than Social Security. And somehow I have a sign over my sink that says "Walk in Faith," and that has really provided a lot of peace for me. I don't stay awake at night worrying about it. I know that my bills will get paid. I'll still have electricity and things like that. And when somebody asks, what do you need? I have to think about that. You know, what do I need? How can someone be of help to me? And finding that place where I'm not sure exactly how, but I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really feeling grounded in that, because I could be pretty distressed otherwise. And the Unity principles, the guidance of all of that, the prayer support. Sometimes money will show up that I'm not expecting. But I have faith that I'll be all right. And I think it's practice. Practice knowing that.
And
when it
living in the
happens,
middle of it, too. You're living in the middle of it.
Right. But having practiced it to some extent, I really have had to practice to be conscious of it now. But I think all of us, it's practicing it. It's saying, I know it's going to be okay. Faith. My sister uses the word hope. I said, no, I think we need to go farther than that. I have faith.
Yeah.
And to get to that place that you know you're going to be okay.
Yeah, that's good. Beautiful. It's kind of, as you were speaking, something I wanted to share with you all at some point in here popped into my mind, so I'll share it now. It's a statement that we actually use. Ellen was probably there when this was done. And the statement is, nothing needs to happen. And let me tell you, when the congregation in Fort Myers affirmed that with me, nothing needs to happen. See, we're used to being the exact opposite. Something needs to happen here. And you're sort of in a nothing needs to happen state, which is odd, because that's when everything starts happening. But let me tell you when that happened. We were in Fort Myers. We had progressed through a number of buildings on our property, so forth. We were breaking ground for what turned out to be a $2.1 million new sanctuary. So we were there with our shovels for the kids and for us and so forth and so on. And a number of people were making little presentations, and I was saying whatever we were saying. But I had the congregation affirm with me, nothing needs to happen. And I'll tell you something about that. If you were to be in a situation and you go, nothing needs to happen, you know what that does? It releases you. That's the feeling that comes. Nothing needs to happen. There is peace in that. There is contentment in that. And one of the things that stops activity from occurring in our lives is all the tension and the holding on, the looking at one door when other doors are open. The mind is not clear, but nothing needs to happen, just frees us. So that's why, there's a lot of, as you would well know, and you all know this, in the spiritual stuff, there's just some real paradoxes. I mean, what unity minister at the time of groundbreaking, when you're going to be raising, millions of dollars, is going to say nothing needs to happen? But that's what we did. And, of course, we moved into that beautiful, beautiful building as it was built and it went up. So the way it works is underlying principles here, talked about this a little bit earlier today. Seek first the kingdom, conscious awareness with God, and we're extending that a little farther now from what we talked about this morning. Now that creates the wick so that the light and the love and the strength and peace, whatever is needed, can then shine forth. But that's where the focus is, on seeking the kingdom, and then everything else will be added. You will, all along the way, have to do your work. When ideas come, for instance, you have to act on them. And you can't be doing your work and just do it once. I got my guidance and I'm set. No. It's daily bread. Revelation comes daily if you're diligent daily. That's the way it comes into our lives. So let's talk a little bit about manifestation. I said to you, there's two kinds of approaches here. One is manifestation is my business. And in the metaphysical community, unity being a part of that, there is a whole stream of thought and beliefs and principles that are about holding in mind exactly what it is you want, et cetera, et cetera. And that works. And for my early days in Unity and right here in Raleigh, at least in the beginning, for a number of years, really, that was sort of my approach. But I made a one of the best mistakes I ever made in my life. Put it that way. You ever made those? The best mistake was I started reading the mystics. The first result of that was real noteworthy is it gutted my soul. Nancy and I were driving around yesterday. We went to the Raleigh Little Theater to kind of, just be in there. And I talked about that a little bit this morning. And we were talking about how at one of our houses, we had gone out, I guess to a park, you said it was. Nancy was pregnant, and I'm telling her that, what's that? It was Mother's Day. Oh, yeah, that helped too. Yeah. She's pregnant, it's Mother's Day, and I'm telling her on this walk, I'm thinking of getting out of the ministry. Not leaving a particular ministry, I'm getting out of the ministry. The reason is this mystical journey I had fallen into, mistakenly encountered and was pursuing, was just gutting my soul. And so that conflict this morning I talked about where Jesus said, I haven't come to bring peace, I've come to bring a sword. That being inner conflict, I was in the middle of it, and I stayed in the middle of it for a number of years. Not too many people knew about it. Obviously, Nancy knew about it right there on that walk. She's pregnant, and I'm saying what I'm saying. So there you go. Why did I tell you that story? What's that? Oh, yes, the no-need state. Yes, and we're going from one thing to the other. We're talking about, I was talking about manifestation, how we were, that kind of approach to spirituality is you get what you want, to a point of, I really don't know what I want, other than I want to be consciously awake and aware. That's what I want. That's seek first the kingdom. That was the central thing, and I saw the promise, which is if I do that, everything else will be added unto me. So I'm going to test it. I'm going to see if it's true. And here I am. I'm still standing 45 years ago from when I was here with you guys, when we had our very first service, and I'm telling you, it works that way. I wouldn't say it is a road without curves and bumps and detours. It is, just like the other one. You sort of end up in a different place in consciousness. You do. Okay, so manifestation is none of my business. Let's talk about manifestation a little bit and how that happens. Let's see, do I have another pen? Yeah, here it is. When you pray and meditate, a lot of people will have something specific in mind. They want the job. They got a decision to make. They've got a healing for themselves or for someone else, and that's where the focus is. It's certainly understandable that that would be the case. And so we pray and we meditate, and we start looking for the job. Or we're looking for the signs of the healing taking place. Another test that comes back that says the cancer isn't there. And we all know those kind of things happen. They do. But I'm talking about a situation that you don't cast your attention outside, because God is invisible. God is intangible. And when the presence first starts moving in your life, when manifestation first starts happening, it will be in the unseen realm. It won't be out there. It'll be in here. So, one thing we have to determine, what is that? How can I perceive it? Can I perceive the movement of God in me? Is it possible for that to happen? Yes, it is. And what is it that is invisible, and yet we can be aware of it? What are those things? Example, a thought. Have you ever seen a thought? No one's ever seen a thought. They don't put them in a jar and run all kinds of tests on them. They don't do that. But thoughts are often the first evidence of the movement of spirit in our lives. Very first movement. What else? What else is unseen? We can perceive it. It has an impact on us. Say again? Feelings, yes. Feelings. Good, thank you. Feelings. Feelings can bring us to our knees or they can lift us up. Either way. Okay, we'll get to those. You guys are ahead of me. Wait for me. I'm your teacher. Okay. Let's stay with the feelings, and then we'll come to that, okay? Be ready. So, feelings, we can all perceive them. They're powerful. And so the first evidence, and this is probably more common than anything else, the first evidence of the movement of spirit within us is a feeling that we call peace. Nancy and I once did a prayer experiment. We had people go through a prayer practice, and then they gave us the results and what was happening and so forth and so on. And peace was number one. That was the first movement that they were feeling. So thoughts, example, James Dillard Freeman, our poet laureate of the Unity Movement, his first wife dies, and in the middle of all that anguish, guess what pours through him? A poem called I Am There. It's not a three-liner, it's a long one, but it lifted him up. Poem that's on the moon now, as you're probably aware. So thought, feeling, and then let me go over here to my friends, because another faculty of being that spirit picks up on and pours through, we probably call imagination. It can be dreams or it can be visions of some kind. So it indicates to us the movement of spirit happens in that way. And there's another one I'm thinking about. I've mentioned it a couple of times. We're dropping the pebble in the pond, like in a pond, and there are concentric circles going out. And we've talked about thought. Whoops, I meant to put that here. Whoop. Thought, feelings, like visions, dreams, etc. And this one is ideas. You ever seen an idea? Ever seen one, put it in a jar, got it sitting on your mantle? No one's ever seen an idea. Everything begins with an idea. That's Plato and Charles Fillmore. So it's like this little dot in the middle, pebble in the pond, that's what the Fillmores called silence, which is the actual experience of the presence of God, and it's a whole different class. We don't need to be talking about this too much. But this is usually just lasts an instant or a moment, but then these ripples go out into the realm of consciousness in our world that we can recognize them. And so what I'm saying to you at this point, we'll go to more of these concentric circles in just a second. Well, what I'm saying to you is, as you do your prayer work, your focus is, and the answer to prayer is to be conscious of your oneness with God. And it will manifest itself in initially unseen ways as thoughts, feelings, ideas, dreams, visions. That's where it will be. And then it'll go out from there, and this is where healings take place. because that's the body. We're going from your consciousness now. Now it's manifesting itself. This is where healings take place. Or it could be new guidance comes, and it's like, become a vegan. That's sort of what happened to Nancy and me. So that will happen. And then out here, what happens next maybe, and these are very recognizable, there's a healing in relationships and forgiveness. And then from there, maybe it goes out into your professional life. And your job. And it might show up as an opportunity. But guess what? You got to recognize it. But see, here's the thing. If you're doing your inner work, you are in a state of consciousness where you can recognize the opportunity. And you've got to stay plugged in. I'll tell you a story here in Raleigh. The people that I'm talking about, I don't even remember their name now, but they were here initially as part of the group, and they really financially supported the emerging ministry. And the man was an engineer, and they had bought a glacier deposit. I don't know, it was in South Carolina or something. It was a big bunch of gravel and sand and so forth, and he had the know-how, and they were creating a business, and they were doing their prayer work, and so they had decided to purchase this and so forth. And as they were building the business, there was the opportunity to put in a road. They had to have a big road because the big dump trucks were going to come. They weighed thousands and thousands of pounds. And what happened, they said, was that they did their initial prayer work, but I guess these are my words. They didn't check in every day. Because what happened was they built a road not of the quality that they should have built it. Probably cost more money to build a bigger road. And so all was well until the rains came. And then these giant dump trucks were pulling in there, and they were getting stuck. And that business folded. Now, did that mean that they missed something at the beginning? I doubt it. These were very spiritually grounded individuals. But you get caught up in the midst of your business and everything that's taking place. You've got to let this be a way of life, a daily way of life, because the source of supply is dispensed daily, not, for, years to come. One single day at a time. And so you want to let go of the possibilities and then be on the lookout, because you will see all these things begin to take place if you seek the kingdom and you let your work become the wick in the candle. So let me tell you what. Let's see what time we got here. Why don't you put everything down? I know about unity people. Don't let them out of the room. I've been a minister for over 45 years. I know what I'm talking about. But I know you need some relief. So why don't you put everything down and just stand up for a minute. And if it wasn't COVID, I'd have you do some things with one another, but we better not do that. So just kind of stretch a little bit, look around you. And we'll do something very exciting when you come back after a little story. Okay. Everybody out there doing that? Okay. Okay. There's Ray McLeod. Hey, Ray McLeod. Hey, buddy. Good, good, good. Yeah, lots of folks there. Wonderful. Okay, you ready to pop back down again? Okay, let's get started again, and then we'll get you all out of here. And in just a moment, my dear friends on the screen, you're going to wish you were here. You're just going to go, oh, I wish I was there. But it's coming. Okay, if you would, everybody sit down. let me tell you a story. It's an ancient story about a king named Nebuchadnezzar. You know that guy? Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I got it. Excuse me. Nebuchadnezzar has a massive ego. So he builds this giant statue of himself. And when certain music is played, then the people have to bow down. So he builds a statue, and his program of falling down is underway. Except there are 3 Jews who are in captivity in Babylon, where he is, and they're not bowing down. You know, they're Jews, one presence, one power. But they have positions of authority. These are gifted individuals, and they were put to work in the administration. There are people who don't like that. And so they noticed that Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, by the way, don't you love those names? Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. I always told Nancy, I wish we had more kids we could name them. Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego. Wouldn't that be great? You know? I'm done, I guess. So anyway, these 3 guys, they're being ratted out on, and they're brought before Nebuchadnezzar, and he's saying, is you doing this? And they said, we have no need to answer you about this because, yeah, it's what we're doing. We're not bowing down to your false statue. So the punishment was, you know this fiery furnace, remember? And so he threatens them with being thrown into the fiery furnace. And this is what they say. Let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods. He says, we have no need to answer you in this matter. And he says, because Nebuchadnezzar is saying, let's see if your gods will deliver you. And they say, if this is the case, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods. So what you get from that, and what I get from that, they have completely let go of outcome. They're saying, we will be true to our spiritual principles, and if we're delivered, so be it. If we're not, so be it. So there's a principle at work here where they have released and let go of outcome. That's what kind of life? One where manifestation is none of your business. Because what you'll find is that there will be incredible forms of manifestation that come that you could never foresee. If we had more time, I would tell you the story about how Nancy and I met. I was looking for another girl that day, and Nancy showed up. So that's another story. If we have time, I'll tell you. Okay, let's go back to our story. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego have said their piece to Nebuchadnezzar. They're letting go of outcome. He has the furnace made 7 times hotter than it was before. In a word, that is what? Intimidation. He's intimidating them. The guys that were stroking the fire to make it hotter, actually fall in. They die. So that's just one of the lovely asides to the Old Testament. I always used to tell our congregation in Fort Myers, I'm talking to you about the Old Testament, so somebody has to die. Somebody has to die. Excuse me. Okay. So they're all bound up, the 3 Jews, they're thrown in. King Nebuchadnezzar, he's looking in there. And he says, how many guys we throw in there? And they say, oh, king, we threw in 3. And he says, I see a 4th one in there, and he looks like the Son of God. And that part of the story is the root for what I told you all this morning. Do you know what part of what I told? I told you a lot of stuff this morning. But this right there, looking into that furnace, seeing this one that looked like the Son of God, is the root of something I told you this morning. You know what it was? Something Jesus said. No? No? Where 2 or 3 are gathered together in my name, there am I in the midst of you. That statement, this gives me chills. That's the root of it right there. So, what happens is they bring them out of the fire. I love this part. They don't even smell a smoke. They are completely untouched by the earthly condition. And that's true, because who we are as spiritual beings is always completely untouched by earthly conditions. And then the king, he says, he declares, therefore I make a decree that all people, nation, and language speaks anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego will be cut to pieces. And their houses shall be made an ash heap, because there is no other God who can deliver like this. The message in that is, ego will always be ego. You know, he just witnessed something incredible, and what's he got to do? Hack people to death. That's the way the ego is. It is consistent, if nothing else. So there it is. So I'm wondering, who deserves this $50 bill? Your hand went up first. Yeah, you were at Canuga. Now, wait a minute. Is this a real $50 bill? It is. Well, you can have it. It's yours. Tell us, how did it feel to get that $50 bill?
I've been waiting ever since I saw the usher come up to you and give you a folded piece of I said, that's the $50.
We got a little cheating going on, and I hope you all don't mind that too much. But does it feel good to have that $50 bill? It feels very good. Okay. Well, yeah, did you hear that? Yeah. Very good. Thank you. You see, I did say, who deserves this $50 bill? And I saw a few hands go up, 2 of which were loaded for bear because they were at Canuga. Okay. What she was saying, we'll get to that in just a second. So I said, who deserves it? This is a Unity church. If you don't feel you deserve $50, how in the world will you ever experience the richness of the kingdom of God? And some of you would realize, given time, that I could have held it like this, and held it, and held it, and held it, and your hand would have never gone up. And if you have that realization now, that's just a point of growth for you. That's all. There's no condemnation. That's just, okay, that's a point of awareness. See, it's all awareness. So I have that awareness now. And what was being said here is that, because we were together about a week or so ago at Canuga, and I was sharing with the ministers and a group of people there, and we were talking about a number of different things, but I used this demonstration. And she's saying she realized she didn't feel deserving of that. Well, amazing thing what a difference 10 days can make. Because up goes the hand. So let me get from some of you, and by the way, let me just say to my friends over here, see what I told you? I told you were going to just go, golly, I wish I was there. I wish my hand would have gone up for sure, right? Yeah, we'll be able, yes. Maybe I can finish up and we can have some question and answer time. That would be good. Well, I told you, though, didn't I? So let me ask you this. I stated it. Yeah. I cannot answer that, but I understand perfectly. So those of you that didn't put your hand up, what do you feel? What do you feel? Do you think, my hand would have never gone up? But yes, here comes the mic.
I felt like we all deserved it, but I personally didn't want it.
Okay. Okay. Yes, sir. Kent.
That I already have it.
Okay, that you already had it. Betty?
For me, it's like hesitation. I always hesitate.
Oh, okay. Point of awareness. Point of awareness here. Yes.
I wanted you to give the $50 to someone that needed it more than I did.
Okay. Okay. But how about someone that realizes my hand wasn't going up and I don't feel deserving? That's just Sharon was saying. Point of awareness. Point of awareness. It's all consciousness. Question. I gave away the $50, my $50. I don't have it anymore. She's not giving it back. I can tell by looking. I can't see her face, down here, but the eyes are saying, "You ain't getting that, Jim." Yeah. Oh, it's down in the basket. Okay. I've seen some incredible things happen. But let me ask you, by giving the $50, did I create lack in my life? Are you sure about that? Hey, she's bigger than I am. I could never get through to get to that. Yeah, by that, remember I said prosperity is a river that flows through me. So I don't believe by giving that $50 away that I created lack in my life. But by all appearances I have. And that is the rub for a lot of folks. They think giving creates lack. That's some of the challenge that people have sitting in a church on a Sunday morning when the opportunity to give comes. They think that it creates lack, and it does not. But that's part of point of awareness, and to learn and to grow and to move through that. Another question for you around this one little exercise. Who demonstrated $50? You know that phrase in Unity that we demonstrate truth? Who demonstrated $50? Sharon demonstrated 50. Mainstream Unity thought, new thought, is that Sharon demonstrated $50 because she got $50. That's the mainstream. There's another stream of which you probably gathered, I've been talking to you about here for an hour or so. That's the opposite. That demonstration is not getting, demonstration is giving. So in my world, I demonstrated $50. Sharon didn't demonstrate it. I demonstrated it. And here's the question, and this was the one I posed at Canuga. With what would have happened to the Unity movement years ago if we would have said, we don't have a body of prosperity teachings, we have a body of generosity teachings? What would have happened to us? What would have happened to the Unity movement years ago if demonstration wasn't getting, demonstration was giving? How does that change an individual's life? How does it change the life of a church? How does it change the life of a movement? And how does it change the world? And so for me now, demonstration isn't getting, it's giving. That's the key. Is it too late for us to make a change? Of course not. And so I suggested to the ministers and licensed teachers who were there that begin a shift, that we don't have a body of prosperity teachings. We have a body of generosity teachings. We teach generosity. in all its different forms. You understand what I mean? So, yes, I might have another microphone coming over.
I'm also an acupuncturist and a physical therapist and had not been able to practice for a while. But in March, I did start practicing. But there's a lot of paperwork things in the system that were not in place. I may never get paid for those treatments, but I get so much out of doing treatments that it doesn't really matter. It's just so satisfying for me. And I realized, well, if we get the system worked out, I may get paid for those, but I'm not banking on that. I just know it feels good to help people.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And, you know, I often suggest that to people have certain skill sets and they're trying to break through music business, for instance, or whatever the case may be. And I suggest to people, this is something that you love doing. Go do it. Just let it be a gift. Begin the flow. That's the whole issue around prosperity. If it is not a lake you dip into and drink from, but it is a river that flows through you, then begin. Just do it. And then see what happens. Be very interesting. Let's say you are not paid, but when you do something like that, something happens in consciousness. And the wick gets created. And then things come. And then but then you got to be open to the opportunities. And you've got to reach that point where you feel deserving enough to actually engage in it. Okay? Yes. Yes, ma'am.
In reference to demonstration, is it possible that your good can be delayed and enter at some later point? Because at the time that I found this crumple up $10 bill, I was in a position where I had nothing to give in terms of monetary giving.
Yeah.
But the money came, and that was just one of two instances. But the money came, so I'm thinking, is it possible that good, in fact, previously when I had been, gainfully employed, the monies were flowing and I was given very generously. But, when the jobs and the money stopped flowing, obviously that stopped. So I'm thinking, is it possible that that good carried over to this time that I really...
It sure could.
Yeah.
And and it's when it's needful, that when it came, it was exactly when you needed it. At the same time, I would say, and we'll talk a little bit about tithing here in a minute from a consciousness perspective. You received $10, you could tithe. You could tithe from that. The money was there, so you had the opportunity to give. Let me give you an example. I was involved here in pioneering Unity Church of Raleigh. At one point in my career, Nancy and I sort of semi-retired, went to Lake of the Ozarks, had a cabin there, and so forth. And we decided, we're in a little community there, 268 people in our town, and like 2,000 down the road and 3,500 down the road there, 15 miles. But we decided, well, let's go ahead and we'll pioneer a church. And so there were a number of people that came together at our home. Nancy, by the way, was thinking, we've been working hard for years and years. Let's just take some time off. And so, yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you. But, people are interested in Unity, so they come by the house. And anyway, the long and short of it is, before that meeting was over, we had a first date for the first service. And after they left, Nancy looked at me and said, "What in the hell happened here?" So I don't know. They were looking for it, and off we went. But here's what happened at that. I don't know if it was that meeting or maybe it was the next one. I had a penny. I was taking a play out of Charles Fillmore's book. I had a penny. And I asked everyone if they would bless it. So I blessed the penny. And there was maybe 8 of us there in that room. And so one person took it, and they blessed it, and blessed it. We all blessed it. And it came back here, and I said to the group, I said, this is the total assets of our ministry. This is all we have, and we're going to give it all away. And so we blessed it, and then we gave it away. You see, illustrating that principle, Charles Fillmore talked about doing the exact same thing. So let's talk a little bit. Let's see, what's the best way to go? Let's talk about tithing. I mentioned that a little bit. There's, typical idea about tithing is what? And this, by the way, this is where you all begin to squirm, right? I'm talking about tithing. You're starting to squirm. You're like, I'd like to get out of here. I would say to you, don't go. And I say, just stay put, and let's just see where we end up. Because there's a verse of Scripture in Malachi. And Malachi's a prophet, and he is getting after the people because they are not tithing. And they are, in essence, saying, yes, we are. We're tithing. And in those days, of course, they didn't have money. And so they're tithing grain. Are you sure you're going now? Okay. I know. That's a Unity minister sneaking out. So she should know this. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So they're tithing with grain, or they're tithing with lambs. So what's happening in this is that they are following the letter of the law. But the spirit of it, they are not. They are tithing damaged grain that could not be used for planting other crops. They are tithing blemished lambs, ones that they wouldn't want in the gene pool to begin with. They would probably need to come out anyway. So the bottom line is this, and this is where, through the story, you and I will get at the real essence of what tithing is. And I'll tell you a story about Unity of Raleigh associated with that. The essence is that those individuals put themselves first. And that's why the prophet was after them, because they put themselves first. And what tithing is it is like it is with everything. Everything is a consciousness, everything. So we're talking about the contrast between a consciousness that puts self first and a consciousness that puts God first. And that's what tithing is. We are told that is giving 10% of your income to your avenue of spiritual good. And I taught that for years and years here in Raleigh. I did that as well. But I've grown in my evolution, and that may have happened while I was here, but the point was that tithing is in consciousness. It is an attitude of God first. So if something wonderful happens, my first response is, thank you, God, that's tithing. When something challenging comes, my first response is, where's the good in this? That's a tithe. And then, of course, there are, you have to step this into your financial well-being and in that dimension of your life as well. But it isn't tied, I don't think, to a particular number. It's a consciousness. And so you get to determine that. When I went to Unity of Fort Myers, there was a ministry that had some pretty big struggles with prosperity. I knew it because I saw their financials before I got there. And I had an interview with the board, and I talked to them about tithing, and I said, I'm not coming here. I'm not willing to come here unless you, as a church, are willing to tithe. And they said, okay. So they ended up offering me a job. I felt guided to go, and I went there. So we got to the first board meeting, and we're talking about tithing. And you talk about all the squirming going on? There it was. It was squirming. So here's what we decided to do, because I wasn't tied to a number. I said, let's just start at 2%. And then each month we'll increase it to 3, 4, and we'll get up to, if we think 10's fair, that's what we'll do. We'll do 10. And so that's what we did. And we never struggled with that. It was, they had struggled in the past. They had not done it in the past. But we released the restraints, let us say. And in Unity Church of Raleigh, we tithe at 11%. And we got to that point over a course of time, but that 1% was utilized for a channel of our spiritual good called Licensed Unity Teacher or Future Licensed Unity Teacher. And so we expanded that. We stepped away from you have to your channel of spiritual good. Our stance was, it is to my spiritual good to give, so I can give anywhere. And we had, Mary, you were here, you were on the board when we did this, I think. We ended up putting some plants in our church. They were like this big. And there were three, and they were in groups of three, and they were in 805 Glenwood Avenue, and they were beautiful, and the people loved those plants. And so one board meeting, we're chatting about where we're going to send our tithe, and someone said, let's send them to the plant people. Well, we were paying for the plants, and we were paying to have them come in and water them because we couldn't get up to the ceiling. They were way the heck up there. But we decided, yeah, we'll do that. So we tied to them. I wrote a letter with it explaining what we were doing, and we sent it to them. And we got this letter back from them, which I read to the congregation, that basically said when they got it, they thought it was a payment for a bill. Then they read the letter, and it's not a payment for a bill. We're tithing. And so you know what they did? They called a board meeting. They called a board meeting to determine what in the world will we do with this money, this gift that was given to us. So they got together, their board, and they started talking about giving and what they were going to do, and they ended up, as they say, passing it on. So it's the fun things that we do. And I don't know if we did it in Raleigh, probably did, but in Fort Myers, every board meeting, the board talked about the tithe for the third and the fourth week, because I wanted the board talking about giving all the time, because boards can get to the point where they're talking about where's the money coming from. And there's two mistakes the board members make. One, they look to the people as the source and their money as supply. Both of those are big problems. The people aren't the supply, and their money is not the source, and their money is not the supply. God's the source, and a consciousness of God, that's the supply. Understand? Okay, how are we doing? Okay, let's see if we can cover one more thing, okay? Let's see here. Where are we? Let's talk about rites of passage of giving, the different avenues that we go through. I wrote a book called Even Mystics Have Bills to Pay, and there's a section in there called Rites of Passage of Giving. And I want to share that with you. And then there's one more piece that if I had to edit the book, I would add it in. Okay? So here's the beginning of a person's generosity journey. First step is they don't give. That's actually part of the journey. It sure has been for me. In days past, I wasn't going to do that because of a couple of things. One, if I give something, I don't have it anymore. I've just created lack in my life. Why do I do that? Fear. I'm afraid. That's what's moving in me. It's just awareness. That's all. And awareness is the beginning of transformation. So that's the beginning. There's the belief that the supply is outside rather than being inside. 2, this is giving out of guilt. And from a minister standpoint, this is what happens when the opportunity to give comes and the person gives $1. And the issue there is not money. The issue is values. Here's what I mean. That same person that gives $1 in this spiritual community that means so much to them, that they love so much, has transformed them so much. And yet they'll go out on a Friday night, they go to the movies. And what's that cost these days? Nancy and I haven't been in a long time, but $10, something like that? Or what? 20? Whoa. And then you go out and you'll have dinner. And the movie wasn't that good, and you go to a restaurant, maybe it's one you really like, and that costs you $20, another 20. So it's $40 on your Friday night or Saturday night. And then, then you come to your spiritual community, and this is the place that means so much to you, that's changed your life. And you have the opportunity to support it, and you put $1. That's not money. That's not fear. That's values. So part of the journey is to get straight on your values, what's important to you. And it makes a huge difference. Third step is you give out of a sense of duty. Some people that give out a sense of duty can give large sums of money, but they do it kind of rote, and there's no joy. And giving is one of the most joyful things that you will ever experience in your life. I'll give you a mundane thing and another supposedly mundane thing that caused me to just shake, and that happened here in Raleigh. Nancy and I, when we go out to a restaurant, we love to give I'm sure the people who are waiting on us, large tips. We'll if our meal costs $50, we'll tip $50 sometimes. And the reason we do that is because of the joy. I know the other person. I remember we were at a really swank restaurant one time, and the meal was enormous. It must have been an anniversary or something. Cost $150, and we gave him, the waiter, remember that? $50. I remember when we left, he followed us out, saying, "Come back anytime." So we will. Next anniversary, we'll do it. But it was just tremendous joy to be able to do that. And, that's a fair sum of money for sure, but it's not what it's not an enormous amount of money. Here's the story. Nancy and I were on vacation. We were down at the beach, Myrtle Beach in that area. Litchfield, we used to go down to Litchfield all the time. And it was raining one day, and so we went to the store. And we're wandering around. I'm in sporting goods. That's where I hang out. So I'm in there looking at all kinds of stuff. And there's a kid there, maybe 8, 9, 10 years old. He's buying a soccer ball. So he puts the soccer ball up on the counter, and he's taking out of his pocket all these crumpled dollar bills, and change is all over the place. And so the clerk is tabulating all of it up, and the kid is short. But he probably didn't calculate tax or something. But he's short less than $1. And I'm kind of casually watching all this take place. And I just walked up with a dollar bill, and I said to the clerk, "Finish the transaction." So they were doing that. As soon as I released the dollar, I started shaking. I once did a Sunday lesson called Trembling in God's Presence, and that was it. I was so filled with joy that I was shaking. And so I went off, and I'm doing what I'm doing. The kid finishes the transaction. The clerk says, "You want the change?" I said, "No, give it to the kid." And so the kid runs by me, and he's right next to me, and he says, "Thanks." And then he's gone. So there's this incredible joy that I have in doing that. That's one thing. Years later, I have the opportunity to donate a kidney to a man, which I do. And here's the thing, which I'm having chills. I love having chills with you guys. You've given me lots of chills through the years. You're still doing it. I had the exact same giddy, off-the-wall joy giving a kidney as I did a dollar bill. Now I ask you, what is wrong with me? But there it was. One was a measly dollar bill, and the other was a body part. And yet the joy associated was unparalleled. When the prospect of giving that kidney came up, Nancy said to me, "What's wrong with you? You're bouncing off the walls." And I said, "I'm so filled with joy. And the folks here in Raleigh know I cry all the time anyway. And when the nurse talked to us, they always have a psychiatric nurse talk to you about making sure I'm not getting money for it or whatever. And I'm just crying my eyes out because I'm so happy to be able to do it. So that's the third sense. Fourth part of the journey, and people in Unity do this all the time, you give in order to get. Because you look at the law, as I give, so shall I receive. And so I'm going to put this to the test. I'm making an investment. And it's okay. It's none of this. There's nothing wrong with any of this. It's all part of the journey. The reason I know about these, I've been in every one of them. So we give in order to get. And then the fifth one is we give because it's our nature to give. It's our nature. I was once at Unity Village. I was talking to a ministerial class, and I was talking to them about a circulation day. You know what a circulation day is? It's like a giant garage sale, except everything's free. And the way we did it in Fort Myers is we, the people, brought all the stuff, but none of us could have any of the stuff. We had to give with no thought of return, and we would contact all the helping agencies around the community and invite the people in need to come. And we had all kinds of things, from appliances to furnitures to lending, sporting goods, electronics, washing machines, all kinds of stuff. Year after year after year, we did this sort of thing. But I was explaining to the ministerial students about this. And there was a man there from Africa. And he said, Jim, that might work here in the States, but it would never work in Africa. And he said, the reason being that the people are so much in need that it would not work. And I said, I guess the only thing I would want you to consider was this. It is our nature to give. And because you live in Africa doesn't change the truth that it is your nature to give. And he said, I get it. I know. So that's the 5 stages that are actually part of the book. And then there's one more. And let me share that, and then we will finish up. It's called Radical Generosity. And there are 3 of us in this room that are aware of it, and a couple others heard about it in Canuga. This I learned, as part of our whole effort to build a sanctuary, 400-seat sanctuary in Fort Myers. We hired an outside expert to help us, wonderful man named Tom Mizzoni, and he taught us about radical generosity. Because in building a building, obviously, it takes a lot of money. And the money had to come and talk about different avenues, all kinds of different avenues. And we had 3 different ways for people to give. One was just from their assets. Another was to kind of stop doing something and use the money that you were spending it on, like cigarettes or whatever. Nancy and I stopped going to Starbucks as much. And we said we could build a whole building by ourselves because of what we spent at Starbucks. So that was one thing. The other thing was to take something that you really loved and sell it. So there were these 3 different ways. Nancy sold her piano. She loved her piano, and she sold it. I sold a boat that I had built with my own hands, a 14-foot cosine weary. The boat almost killed me. It's a long story. But I sold that thing. I remember tears going down my face as the thing was going out the driveway. A man in Williamsburg, Virginia, bought it. So we had these 3 different ways to do that. When it came to, giving out of your assets, one of the things was very interesting. We had a bunch of meetings. We talked to the people about not about money or that, just about being in unity. It was wonderful, wonderful experience. We had 34, 37 meetings. Many of them were in our own home, and people were there. And I would always say to Nancy, like at the first one, I said, well, what are we going to give? Nancy gave me a figure. And after every one of these meetings, I would ask her, and she would say, whatever. By the time we got done, it was 10 times more than what the first one was. And here's what radical generosity is. This is where you push into your ego until it pushes back. You want it to push back. And it doesn't matter what the amount is, just find your place. And so we pushed in until the ego said something like, you can't do that. That if you do that, you won't be able to have the retirement that you'd like to have. If you do this, it's going to be a financial disaster for you. Now, I knew when we got there that we were close. It was pushing back hard. But I knew it wasn't enough. You know why? Because there was no peace. Because what happens in radical generosity is when the ego pushes back, you need to push a little bit more. And then what happens is you break forth into a peace, a profound peace. And then you know, this is what I must do. And there were people that were doing it. They didn't even know how. I don't think we knew how. But you do it anyway. And Ellen, she was a part of that whole experience. So these are these 6 different stages. And I think the last one is more for, really breakthrough times, because it was a time of breakthrough for many of us. There was a couple that came to sit down with me in my office in Fort Myers, and we had said that we were going to tithe off the building fund. That's basically very seldom done in the unity movement. I'm sure others would do it because people say it's a designated fund. You don't tithe on that. Well, our stance was, hey, it's coming from the same source, so we need to acknowledge that. So we were going to tithe off of that. They came in, sat down, a couple, and they said they didn't like the idea of tithing. And I thought they meant tithing off of, the building fund. No, they didn't like, it's funny, they didn't like the idea of the church tithing at all. They thought we should just take the money and use it for good purposes. I said, no, we need to work our principles. And so I don't know if it was a test or whatever, but, they said to me, well, Jim, we don't know if we're going to give to this project because, we're kind of unsettled about that. And I said, I understand. It's okay. Whatever you want to do or not do, it's okay. I didn't want to say nothing needs to happen, but you know what I mean? So I'm just sitting there with them. And then all the different commitments were coming in, that couple gave $200,000. And which makes me wonder if they did that when they didn't like what we were doing. What would they have done if they did like what we were doing? But they became wonderful friends, and it was amazing. So avenues open up for all kinds of incredible things.